we're 444 days now until the World Cup Master. Do we have more questions than we have answers at this point?
I think we have even more questions. And I think the biggest question now is, what is their identity? We knew what it was with Greg Berhalter in trying to play pretty, winning the 1-0 games. We didn't like it. We knew what it was, but we didn't like what that identity was. Now you can see this right now through these last 2 games, and I'm wondering, okay, we were expecting a team that was going to be much more attacking. They scored 1 goal. We were expecting a team that could press, didn't see that too much. Defensively, obviously the 3 goals that they conceded in those 2 matches were all in transition off of mistakes that the United States played themselves into that could have been avoided. So, and you always look for a nation to reflect the identity of the country, land of the free, home of the brave. I'm expecting bravery at the bare minimum from these guys. Who was being brave on the pitch in these 2 matches? It was hard to find out. Diego Luna was the only one that you saw that had some level of spirit to him. And, of course, he's hungry because he's trying to prove a point. But beyond that, where was the bravery?
Quite frankly, I think that massive chip that got heaved onto Diego Luna's shoulder might have benefited him the most going forward, because knowing that he was going back and forth between being left off rosters, do I go Mexico, do I go U.S., I feel like he's tried so hard and he's managed to show out.
You think of golden generations that have come before this team in other countries. You think of England's golden generations. You think of Spain's golden generations. You think of all the other nationals. Portugal had a golden generation. The thing that I associate with golden generations, there's a core group of players, not just your first 11, but your first 15, your first 20 that are winners. I'd be shocked if you could name how many of these players have a winning mentality right now. Not for their club team, but when they put on that U.S. men's national team jersey.
They don't.
And you talk about the home of the brave and bravery. What I saw and what irks me about this Nations League performance is these guys don't realize how unique of an opportunity it is to represent your jersey, your country. I had the chance to go represent Sierra Leone, and we used to foam at the mouth for any sort of match that we could get and play against any team around the world. And every game was a final. Did we win all the time? No, or else we would have been in a World Cup or 2. But the question about passion, the question about attitude, that was something that you could never question. And you see the big difference between a Panama and the United States, a country that doesn't have the resources in a lot of ways that the USMNT does right now. It doesn't have the plaudits, but they have the bite and the hunger. I would take a lot of those Panamanian players over most of the U.S. men's national team from this weekend, and I'll guarantee that. I stand behind that.
And look, we can talk about the underestimation of Panama, as you talk about the United States, for whatever reason it is. They've used 37 different players in the Gold Cup, in Nations League, and also in Copa America. And we're not able to beat Panama. There's no reason when you talk about the amount of resources that are poured into the United States for that to happen. And in this game in particular, the thing that was the most jarring to talk about in terms of the pride and the passion of playing for the country, putting the captain's armband on Christian Pulisic, for me, was a way for Poch to try to motivate him, because it was a bit disrespectful to Tyler Adams, truth be told, because I feel like he's the vocal leader. He does a great job in terms of that captain armband, and it's something that he's wanted. But that, to me, was like a tactic, it felt like, for a coach to be like, hey, here's more pressure on you. Here's more responsibility on you to feel the load, to feel the pressure and have a response from it. And I don't know how much of that we actually saw from him until they were down 1-0. He had 2 direct runs that he had that helped spur some momentum and some energy from this team that ultimately led to Weah's run. But beyond that, there was more from Pulisic that I needed to see that I didn't see in these 2 matches.
I think that with that, we don't give enough credit to Canada and their defense in isolating Pulisic.
Great point.
Because you're going to know that he's going to be their target man. He is head and shoulders their best attacker, if you're even just looking at club careers. But I think that they did that really effectively. So I don't really necessarily ding that off of Pulisic. But to your point about him getting the captain's armband, I think that Christian is a leader. He's just not a leader outwardly in the respect that some people want to see it, in the way that Tyler Adams is and has been. Tyler Adams has always been uniquely mature for his age, even going back and exhibited these very, camaraderie rallying sentiments that he can get people in place, make sure that you're dropping back in that kind of respect. Whereas I think Christian leads by doing his job really well. Unfortunately, when he's stifled by a team that knows, Jesse Marsch knows Pulisic. Canada are familiar with his game. They know how to tie him up and hem him up so he's ineffective. And I think they did that well. With that being said, does it leave a lot of questions with other U.S. national team players? For sure. I think that, to your point, I totally agree with you. This golden generation notion is, I feel like, fan sourced. It's that the little bits of hope that we've had for the U.S. men's national team, in contrast to what we've seen from the women's side, is so high that we grip tight to whatever players are exceeding. And with that, we just all of a sudden start buying this stock. But I don't think that was ever a basis in reality for this U.S. national team. And again, to your point, Master, yes, we saw 33 different players in camps and over these last camps. And I think that's fine, but frame them differently. Take a page from the women's national team book, frame them as futures camps. Try to get something in the longevity of this program and also look at the short side.
We've got to talk about Mauricio Pochettino. I watched his post-match press conference last night. Concerned me slightly that he had to check with the press officer if it was March.
I think he was dazed and confused after the result.
I don't blame him.
But in terms of him going forward now, I mentioned it before, 444 days to go until the World Cup. He has some changes to make. Yeah. Big question, Lahoud, is what changes are there? Master, you made a great point about the amount of players we've seen so far. Does he know his best 11?
No, he doesn't, because he's contending and competing with U.S. soccer. And there's some players, and I'm going to call a spade here, because we can.
Talk to him.
Morning Footy, Golasso Network.
Let him know.
There are some players that get away with murder on this U.S. men's national team and hide. So one player I'm going to have a dig at, and professionally as always, Weston McKennie. Weston McKennie is an amazing, talented footballer. Weston McKennie is one of my favorite players in Serie A this season because the character that he's shown for Juventus time and time again. Thiago Motta made him his captain, and I thought it was the perfect decision to really send a message to the rest of the Juve players of like, hey, this guy has character, this guy is doing it. What Weston McKennie did against Canada, I thought he was hiding. There are so many plays. You look at the first goal that Canada scores. That is a defensive midfielder, box-to-box midfielder, but when you're playing in that formation, you're playing next to Tyler Adams, you have to track back. Weston McKennie is jogging back. And this was a match that Mauricio Pochettino said he wanted to see the character. There's a test of character, test of mentality, that he wanted to challenge these players. And I was so disappointed in Weston McKennie's body language. I was so disappointed in the lack of bite. I mean, this is a guy that won 1 of 7 duels in the middle of the park. Ishmael Koney ate him alive.
Yeah.
And that is unacceptable for a player of his standard. And if you're Mauricio Pochettino, I'm a firm believer that certain players, they need a bit of fire. And Weston's a player that, having something to prove, I think gets the best out of him. So make him prove something. Get competition in there. Tanner Tessman, you brought him in. Play Tessman. See how Weston responds. Over the next 7 windows that we have, certain players, they need a reality check and a gut check, and he's one of them.
Yeah, I feel like knowing the player that he is, that's more of a scathing indictment on the overall vibe in this U.S. men's national team, that he was willing to relinquish things. Just his work rate regularly. He's tireless. He will put in a full shift and then some for Juve. It's telling of what's going on more generally with the men's national team, I think.
I feel like we all feel a little bit better after that. It was almost like therapy.
Yeah, not really.
No. Just as well we've got more of the show to go.